missing in action. Commander Root was sucking on a particularly noxious fungus cigar. Several of the retrieval squad had nearly passed out in the shuttle with him. Even the pong from the manacled trolls seemed mild in comparison. Of course, no one said anything. Their boss was being touchier than a septic bum boil. Foley, on the other hand, delighted in antagonising his superior. "None of your rancid stogies in here, Commander," he brayed the moment Root made it back to ops. "The computers don't like smoke." Root scowled. Certainly that Foley was making this up. Nevertheless, the commander was not prepared to risk a computer crash in the middle of an alert, and so doused his cigar in the coffee cup of a passing gremlin. "Now, Foley, what's this so-called alert? And it better be good this time." The Centaur had a tendency to go completely hyper over trivialities. He'd once done a DEFCON 2 because his human satellite stations were out of service. "It's good, all right," Foley assured him. "Or should I say bad, very bad." Root felt the ulcer in his gut begin to bubble like a volcano. "How bad?" Foley punched up Ireland on the Eurosat. "We lost contact with Captain Short." "Why, I'm not surprised," groaned Root, burying his face in his hands. "We had her all the way over the Alps." "The Alps? She took a land route?" Foley nodded. "Against regulations, I know, but everyone does it." The commander agreed grudgingly. Who could resist a view like that? As a rookie, he'd been placed on report himself for that exact offence. "OK, move on. When did we lose her?" Foley opened a VT box on the screen. "This is the feed from Holly's helmet. Here we are over Disneyland Paris." The Centaur pressed the fast forward. "Now dolphins, blah, blah, blah. The Irish coastline, still no worries. Look, her locator comes into shot. Captain Short is scanning for magic hot spots. Site 57 shows up red. So she heads for that one." "Why not Tara?" Foley snorted. "Tara? Every fairy hippie in the Northern Hemisphere will be dancing around that Leofale in the full moon. There'll be so many shields on it'll look like the whole place is underwater." "Fine," grunted Root through gritted teeth. "Just get on with it, will you?" "All right, don't get your ears in a knot." Foley skipped several minutes of tape. "Now, here's the interesting bit. Nice smooth landing, hangs up the wings, Holly takes off the helmet." "Against regulations," interjected Root. LEP officers must never remove their headgear above ground unless said headgear is defective," completed Foley. "Yes, Commander, we all know that the handbook says." "But are you trying to tell me that you never sneaked a breath of fresh air after a few hours in the sky?" "No," admitted Root. "What are you, her fairy godmother or something? Get to the important bit!" Foley smirked behind his hand, driving up Root's blood pressure as one of the few perks of his job. No one else would dare do it. That was because everybody else was replaceable, but not Foley. He'd built the system from scratch, and if anyone else even tried to boot it up, a hidden virus would bring it crashing down around their pointy little ears. The important bit. Yes, here we are. Look, suddenly Holly drops the helmet. It must land lens down because we lose picture. We've still got sound though, so I'll bring that up. Foley boosted the audio signal, filtering out background noise. "Not great quality. The mic's in the camera, so that was nose down in the dirt too, huh?" "Nice pea shooter," says a voice. Definitely human. Deep too. That usually meant big. Root raised his eyebrows. "Pea shooter?" "Slang for a gun." Oh, then the importance of that simple statement struck him. She drew her weapon? "Just wait, it gets worse." "I don't suppose you would consider..." Oh, sorry, wrong voice. "I don't suppose you would consider peaceful surrender," said a second voice. Just listening to it gave the commander shivers. "No," continued the voice. "I suppose not." "This is bad," said Root, his face uncharacteristically pale. "This feels like a setup. Those two goons were waiting. How is that possible?" Holly's voice came through the speaker then, typically brazen in the face of danger. The commander sighed. At least she was alive. It was more bad news, though, as the parties exchanged threats, and the second human displayed an uncommon knowledge of fairy affairs. "He knows about the ritual!" "Here's the worst bit." Root's jaw dropped. "The worst bit?" Holly's voice again, this time layered with the mesmer. "Now she has 'em!" crowed Root. But apparently not. Not only did the mesmer prove ineffective, but the mysterious pair seemed to find it amusing. "That's all there is from Holly," noted Foley. "One of the mud people messes around with the camera for a bit and then, we lose everything." Root rubbed the creases between his eyes. "Not much to go on. No visual, not a name. We can't really be 100% sure that we even have a situation." "You want proof?" asked Foley, rewinding the tape. "I'll give you proof." He ran the available video. "Now watch this. I'm going to slow it right down. 1 frame per second." Root leaned in close to the screen, close enough to see the pixels. "Captain Short comes in for a landing. She takes off her helmet, bends down, presumably to pick up an acorn, and there!" Foley jabbed the pause button, freezing the picture completely. "See anything unusual?" The commander felt his ulcer begin to churn into overdrive. Something had appeared at the top right-hand corner of the frame. At first glance, it just seemed like a shaft of light. But light from what? Or reflected from what? "Can you blow that up?" "No problem." Foley cut to the relevant area. Increasing it by 400%, the light expanded to fill the screen. "Oh, no!" breathed Root. There on the monitor before them, in frozen suspension, was a hypodermic dart. There could be no doubt. Captain Holly Short was missing in action. Most probably dead. But at the very least held captive by a hostile force. "Tell me we still have the locator." "Yep, strong signal, moving north about 80 clicks an hour." Root was silent for a moment, formulating his strategy. "Go to full alert and get retrieval out of their bunks and back down here. Prep 'em for a surface shot. I want full tactical and a couple of techies. You too, Foley. We may have to stop time on this one." 10-4, Commander. You want recon in on this?" Root nodded. "You bet." "I'll call in Captain Vane. He's our number 1. "Oh, no," said Root. "For a job like this, we need our very best, and that's me. I'm reactivating myself." Foley was so amazed he didn't even formulate a smart comment. You're... "Yes, Foley. Don't act so surprised. I've got more successful recons under my belt than any other officer in history. Plus, I did my basic training right there in Ireland. Back in the top hat and chalet-lag days." "Yes, but that was 500 years ago, and you were no spring bud back then, not to put too fine a point on it." Root smiled dangerously. "Don't you worry, Foley. I'm still running red hot. And I'll make up for my age with a really, really big gun. Now get a pod ready. I'm leaving on the next flare." Foley did what he was told without a single quip. When the commander got that glint in his eyes, you hoped and you kept your mouth shut. But there was another reason for Foley's silent compliance. It had just hit him that Holly could be in real trouble. Centaurs don't make many friends, and Foley was worried that he might lose one of the very few that he had. Artemis had anticipated some technological advances, but nothing like the trove of fairy hardware spread out on the 4-wheel drive's dashboard. "Impressive," he murmured. "We could abort this mission right now and still make a fortune in patents." Artemis ran a handheld scanner bar over the unconscious elf's wristband. He then fed the fairy characters into his PowerBook translator. "This is a locator of some kind. No doubt this leprechaun's comrades are tracking us right now." Butler swallowed. "Right now, sir?" "It would seem so. Or at any rate, they're tracking the locator." Artemis stopped speaking suddenly, his eyes losing focus as the electricity in his cranium sparked off another brainwave. "Butler?" The manservant felt his pulse quicken. He knew that tone. Something was coming. "Yes, Artemis?" "That Japanese whaler. The one seized by the Port Authority. Is she still tied up at the docks?" Butler nodded. "Yes, I believe so." Artemis twirled the locator's band around his index finger. "Good. Take us down there. I believe it's time to let our diminutive friends know exactly who they are dealing with." Root rubber-stamped his own reactivation with remarkable speed, very unusual for LEP upper management. Generally, it took months and several mind-crushingly dull meetings to approve any application to the recon squad. Luckily, Root had a bit of influence with the commander. It felt good to be back in a field uniform, and Root even managed to convince himself that the jumpsuit was no tighter around his middle than it used to be. The bulge, he rationalised, was caused by all the new equipment they jammed into these things. Personally, Root had no time for gadgets. The only items the commander was interested in were the wings on his back and the multi-phase water-cooled tri-barreled blaster strapped to his hip. The most powerful production handgun under the world. Old, to be sure, but it had seen Root through a dozen firefights, and it made him feel like a field officer again. The nearest chute to Holly's position was E1, Tara. Not exactly an ideal location for a stealth mission, but with barely 2 hours of moontime left, there was no time for an overground jaunt. If there was to be any chance of sorting out this mess before sunrise, speed was of the essence. He commandeered the E1 shuttle for his team, bumping a tour group who had apparently been queuing there for 2 hours. Well, 2 years. "Tough nuggets," Root growled at the holiday rep. "And what's more, I'm shutting down all non-essential flights until the present crisis is past." "And when might that be?" squeaked the irate gnome, brandishing a notebook as though she were prepared to make a complaint of some kind. Root spat out the butt of his cigar, squashing it comprehensively beneath the heel of his boot. The symbolism was all too obvious. "The chutes will be opened, madam, when I feel like it," growled the commander. "And if you and your fluorescent uniform don't get out of my way, I'll yank your operating licence and have you thrown into the cells for obstructing an LEP officer." The holiday rep wilted before him and slunk back into line, wishing her uniform wasn't quite so bright pink. Foley was waiting at the pod. Serious though the moment was, he couldn't resist an amused whinny at the sight of Root's big belly wobbling ever so slightly in his clinging jumpsuit. "Are you sure about this, Commander? Generally, we only allow 1 passenger per pod." "What do you mean?" snarled Root. "There's only one—" Then he caught Foley's meaningful glance at his big stomach. "Oh, ha, 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 very amusing. Keep it up, Foley. I've got a limit, you know." But it was a hollow threat, and they both knew it. Not only had Foley built their communications network from scratch, but he was also a pioneer in the field of flare prediction. Without him, human technology could very easily catch up with the fairy brand. Root strapped himself into the pod. No half-century-old crafts for the commander. This baby was fresh off the assembly line, all silver and shiny with new jagged fin stabilisers that were supposed to read the magma currents automatically. Foley's innovation, of course. For a century or so, his pod designs had leaned towards the futuristic, plenty of neon and rubber. Lately, however, his sensibilities had become more retrospective, placing the gadgetry with walnut dashes and leather upholstery. Root found his old-style decor strangely comforting. He wrapped his fingers around the joysticks and suddenly realised just how long it was since he had ridden the hot shots. Foley noticed his discomfort. "Don't worry, Chief," he said without the usual cynicism. "It's like riding a unicorn. You never forget." Root grunted, unconvinced. "Let's get the show on the road," he muttered, "before I change my mind." Foley hauled the door across until the suction ring took hold, sealing the portal with pneumatic hiss. Root's face took on a green hue through the quartz pane. He didn't look so scary anymore. Quite the opposite, in fact.